In the 17th century colonies, there seemed to be varying degrees of freedom in a fairly fluid society. How would you describe 17th century society in terms of freedom?
Well, in the early colonies in the 17th century, settlers lived, you might say, on a spectrum which encompassed a wide variety of different kinds of freedom. At one end, there were the people who were, you might say, fully free. These were landowners, planters, merchants, lawyers, prosperous people. They enjoyed all the political rights, the right to vote, the right to hold office, assuming they were Protestant. They were full members of the political society. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, were slaves. Slavery was not a large institution in the 17th century, but it was there from the very beginning. And obviously the slave is the opposite of freedom, is deprived of all his rights. And in the middle was a vast array of population which had, you might say, partial freedom. There were indentured servants. Most English who came over came as indentured servants, who were people who traded away their freedom for a few years in exchange for passage to the New World. So while they were contracted to work, they weren't really fully free. They could be bought and sold like slaves. They could be whipped, punished, etc. But they would become free after a certain number of years. Women certainly didn't enjoy anything remotely like what we would consider freedom today. Women, if they were married, were considered really an appendage of the husband. All their rights were exercised through their husband. They had very, very few independent legal rights. So the society is shot through with different levels of freedom, and freedom is not a universal ideal. The idea of liberty, or as the phrase was then, liberties actually, varied enormously depending what status you had in society. The liberty of a big landowner was very different than the liberty of an indentured servant. There was no notion of liberty that was the same for everybody.